We would just like to advise the court in the state of Florida that at any time Mr. Cruz is willing to enter a plea of guilty on all 34 counts, consecutive life sentences, in exchange for the waiver of the death penalty.
They weren't just young, they were killers. Each one committed a crime so brutal, so calculated, that judges had no choice but to lock them away forever. But what pushed these individuals over the edge? And how did they react when the final verdict dropped?
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others.
On Valentine's Day 2018, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, armed with a semi-automatic rifle. For 6 minutes, he fired more than 100 rounds into classrooms and hallways. 17 people, 14 students, and 3 staff members died, and 17 more were wounded. Cruz had shown warning signs. He was expelled from school for disciplinary problems, made online threats, and struggled with depression. Despite these red flags, he managed to buy the weapon legally. Residents recall hearing a barrage of shots that afternoon and rushing students through side doors to safety. In the days that followed, Parkland erupted in grief and anger. Parents pinned pictures of missing teenagers to trees. Vigils filled nearby parks. Survivors and families demanded stricter gun laws. Lawmakers and school boards held urgent meetings. The attack, one of the deadliest high school shootings in U.S. history, ignited a national movement led by survivors calling for change. When Cruz finally stood trial in late 2022, the Parkland courtroom was packed. Victims' families filled the front rows, clutching photos of their lost loved ones. As each name was read aloud, a wave of silence washed over the room. Cruz sat motionless, wearing a dark suit and tie, his hands folded atop the table. His face remained blank, eyes fixed on the judge's bench. During the penalty phase, survivors and family members delivered tear-filled statements. One mother spoke of her daughter's laugh, now forever muted. Another father described how he still woke at night, calling for his son. Each account drew quiet sobs from the gallery. At times, Cruz glanced up, his expression unreadable. When the judge reminded him of the lives he stole, Cruz bowed his head but did not speak. Judge Elizabeth Scherer addressed Cruz directly. "You planned this attack. You chose these victims. Today you will learn that actions have grave consequences." At the close of the statements, Cruz rose and offered a brief apology. "I'm sorry for your loss. I wish I could undo what I did." His voice shook, but many felt the words lacked true remorse. As he returned to his seat, some family members shook their heads, while others wept openly. In November 2022, Nicholas Cruz pleaded guilty to 17 counts of first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted murder, sparing families the pain of a full trial. By law, Florida jurors then decided between life imprisonment and the death penalty. After hearing extensive testimony, the jury recommended life without parole. On November 2nd, Judge Scherer formally imposed 17 consecutive life sentences, one for each person killed, plus additional time for the wounded. Cruz will never see freedom again. He is housed in a maximum security unit at Taylor Correctional Institution. His appeals continue. His lawyers challenge aspects of the penalty phase, while victims' advocates push for the state's highest courts to uphold the life terms. In the wake of his sentencing, Parkland families have launched scholarship funds in their loved ones' names and campaigned for school safety reforms nationwide. Across Florida, new rules require safe storage of firearms in homes, with strict penalties for failure. Many schools now lock classroom doors electronically and train staff to spot troubled students early. Yet for those who lived through February 14, 2018, no law can erase the memory of that day. Every time a courtroom door closes, families feel a small measure of justice, but the wounds they carry may never fully heal.
I'd like to thank you for letting me speak, Your Honor. We are all here because of me.
On November 30th, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley, sat in his English classroom at Oxford High School in Michigan, sketching images of bullets and people bleeding. That afternoon, he pulled a 9mm handgun from a backpack and opened fire, killing 4 students and wounding 6 classmates and a teacher. Crumbley's parents had bought the weapon days earlier and left it unlocked at home, details that would later spark charges against them. Investigators uncovered disturbing journal entries on Crumbley's desk, including notes like, "The thoughts won't stop, help me." A video from his phone showed him watching clips of past shootings. Teachers reported the violent drawings to administrators, but no action remove him from class. In just over a minute of chaos, Crumbley changed a quiet suburban school into a scene of blood and panic. When police arrived, Crumbley surrendered without resistance. Oxford residents mourned in candlelit vigils. Parents held on to each other, refusing to believe their kids could be lost so close to home. National headlines called it a preventable tragedy. Lawmakers demanded tougher safe storage rules. Mental health experts warned of the dangers of ignoring warning signs. Crumbley's sentencing hearing in December 2023 drew crowds and live stream viewers. When the court played video of his drawings and recordings, gasps echoed in the gallery. Victims' families sat stone-faced as each clip replayed the horror of that day.
If you were that lonely, that miserable, that lost, and you really needed a friend, Justin would have been your friend if you had only asked him.
Crumbley looked away at times, his expression unreadable. During impact statements, survivors and bereaved parents spoke with trembling voices. One mother described finding her daughter's backpack in a hallway, strewn with textbooks and blood. Another teenage survivor recounted hiding under a desk while shots rang out. As tears fell, Crumbley's lawyer warned the judge that a minor's brain is still developing. Crumbley himself shifted in his chair, occasionally glancing at the faces around him. Judge Grant Gershkemper paused the hearing when Crumbley began to cry, quiet sobs that filled the room. "Your tears won't bring back those lives," the judge said firmly. "They won't undo the pain you caused." Crumbley wiped his eyes and looked down. When the judge questioned him directly, "Do you understand why this sentence must be severe?" Crumbley nodded, barely audible. Under Michigan law, juveniles can receive life without parole only after a hearing on whether they deserve mercy. On December 14, 2023, Judge Gershkemper ruled that Crumbley's planning and execution left no room for leniency. He sentenced Crumbley to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Shortly after, Crumbley's parents, James and Jennifer, faced involuntary manslaughter charges. Prosecutors argued they ignored clear signs of danger and failed to secure the gun. A judge later sentenced them to 10 years each after they fled before arrest. Oxford schools adopted new safety measures. Every classroom now has sealed entry doors. Staff carry panic buttons, and students participate in regular drills. The Michigan legislature passed a strict safe storage law, requiring gun owners to lock weapons and face prison for violations. Meanwhile, Oxford families formed the Oxford Cares coalition to fund therapy for students and push for mental health resources in schools. Though Crumbley's tears in court hinted at regret, his life term signals that some actions leave no path back. For a community haunted by November 2021, every locked school door and safety meeting is a reminder of what can happen when warning signs go unheeded.
You want to plead guilty to the 3 aggravated murder charges with the firearm specifications?
Yes, Your Honor.
On February 27, 2012, 17-year-old Thomas J. T.J. Lane carried a shotgun into the cafeteria of Chardon High School in Ohio. It was lunch hour, and dozens of students sat chatting and eating. Without warning, Lane opened fire, hitting 6 students. 3, Daniel Parmertor, Demetrius Hewlin, and Russell King Jr. died. Others were left with life-changing injuries. Lane dropped the gun and walked calmly out of the cafeteria, blending into the shocked crowd. Investigators learned that Lane had planned the attack for weeks. He posted cryptic messages online and practiced with a shotgun bought by his mother. Friends said he felt alienated at school and harbored deep anger. In the days after the shooting, Chardon was draped in black and blue ribbons. Vigils filled the town square. Teachers, students, and parents gathered in gymnasiums, holding hands and lighting candles. Psychologists spoke of trauma, and local leaders called for better screening for troubled teens. The violence, random and cold, left a community struggling to find answers and justice. When Lane arrived at his sentencing hearing in March 2013, he made his presence known. He wore a t-shirt with the word "killer" scrawled across the front. Cameras caught him smirking as victims' families filed in. As each parent shared stories of loss, Lane sat back, arms crossed, occasionally chuckling. He even gave a middle finger salute to the Parmertor family when they cried out in grief. The judge, James Burge, paused the hearing and stared at Lane. "Your behavior shows no regret," he said sternly. Families in the gallery gasped at Lane's contempt. His father and uncle looked away, ashamed. Judge Burge warned Lane, continued disrespect could cost him a chance at any mercy. Lane folded his arms, face unreadable as sisters of the slain students wept openly. News crews replayed the footage that night, broadcasting his smirk and gestures across the country. Many viewers were outraged that a teenager could treat a courtroom, normally a place of solemn justice, as a stage for defiance. Lane pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. On March 19, 2013, at 18, he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus additional years for those injured in the shooting. He was sent to the Lebanon Correctional Institution, an adult prison with high security measures. Ohio law bars parole for aggravated murder without special mercy. Lane's family filed an appeal, arguing his age and mental health should reduce his sentence. In 2014, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected the appeal, upholding the life terms. Lane remains in maximum security, with little chance of ever leaving. The Chardon community responded by boosting school safety protocols, metal detectors, locked entry points, and resource officers in every hallway. Support groups for survivors and families meet monthly to share healing and grief strategies. Lane's case sparked debate over how to handle violent youth. Some call for stiffer penalties, while others push for more mental health intervention before tragedy strikes. For Chardon, every school bell echoes the day a student's life changed forever and reminds them of the fragile line between safety and fear.
And for accepting the offer was to avoid the absolute certainty of life without parole. If there was...
On October 21st, 2009, 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante invited her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, to walk in an empty lot near their homes in St. Martins, Missouri. Moments later, Alyssa emerged alone, telling friends she had helped move leaves. That evening, police found Elizabeth's body in a shallow grave, strangled and stabbed multiple times, her throat slit. Investigators learned Alyssa had dug the grave days before, practiced how to bind wrists, and even written about killing someone just to feel what it was like. Alyssa's diary revealed pages of dark fantasies and a plan to hide the body. She confessed within hours, calmly telling detectives she felt nothing as Elizabeth died. Neighbors, stunned by her normal schoolgirl routine, recalled nothing suspicious. Parents realized that evil can hide behind a friendly face. News of the crime spread quickly, and St. Martin's residents gathered in churches and community centers to mourn a young life stolen by another child. Alyssa's recorded confession, taped in the interrogation room with her grandmother present, became a focal point. On camera, Alyssa sat composed as she described each blow, while her grandmother cried and pleaded for her to stop talking. When the tape played in court, the gallery fell silent. Some courthouse staff turned away, unable to watch. At her 2012 sentencing hearing, Alyssa appeared in a dark suit, looking pale and shaky. When the judge asked if she understood the charges, she nodded, eyes downcast. Elizabeth's mother then stepped forward, voice trembling. "You took my baby, and I'll never forgive you." Alyssa lifted her head, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "I'm sorry," and covered her face with trembling hands. The judge paused, noting her genuine remorse, but warning that forgiveness could not erase the violence inflicted. Reporters captured every moment. Alyssa's tear-streaked face, her grandmother's sobs, and the Olton family's broken cries. These images circulated widely, fueling debates on juvenile crime and mental illness. Alyssa pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. In May 2012, Judge Mark Bovaird sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of conditional release after 30 years, plus an extra 30 years for the weapon charge, meaning she must serve at least 35 years before parole. In March 2024, Alyssa sought her first parole hearing. She appeared before the board wearing prison garb, expressing deep regret and describing the counseling she had received. The board denied her request, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and public safety concerns. Her case reshaped how courts handle juvenile homicide. Lawyers for young defendants now point to Alyssa's plea deal as a model for avoiding life without parole, offering a chance for release if there is genuine rehabilitation. Psychologists argue that lengthy sentences must come with strong therapy and education programs to give juveniles a real shot at reform. Outside, Elizabeth's family established the Elizabeth's Light Foundation, funding grief counseling and safe neighborhood projects. Each October 21st, they hold a walk in her memory, hoping to remind parents and teens of the delicate line between fantasy and tragedy, one that, when crossed, can never be undone.
I don't think that the defendant has the right to hear how he affected me, my family, or who Jessica was.
On the morning of October 5th, 2012, 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway left her Westminster, Colorado home for a walk to school. Hours later, her body was found in a field. She had been strangled and dismembered, her torso and limbs hidden in garbage bags. The community was horrified. Police quickly focused on 17-year-old Austin Sigg after his mother reported suspicious comments he made at breakfast that day. Detectives searched his home and found gruesome trophies, body parts preserved in his room. Sigg confessed, telling officers he had planned the attack for weeks. He admitted to luring Jessica away with a promise to help find a lost dog, then carrying out the brutal killing. Staff at the station recorded Sigg's calm confession on video. He spoke in a quiet, steady voice as investigators asked him where he buried each piece. The tape captured Sigg describing his actions with chilling detachment. Westminster residents, still reeling from the shock, watched news reports recount every gory detail. Local churches held prayer vigils, and counselors offered support in schools. Parents clutched their children closer, unable to shake the fear that a teenager in their town had shown such cold violence. Sigg's sentencing hearing in December 2013 drew national attention. Inside the Jefferson County courtroom, experts took the stand to describe his crime as sadistic and without a clear motive. One psychologist said Sigg displayed traits of a hardened killer, not a remorseful youth. When the judge called on Jessica's family, her mother, Shauna Ridgway, spoke through tears. She described finding her daughter's bike on the curb and then the horror of seeing her child's lifeless body. Shauna's voice cracked as she vowed to keep Jessica's memory alive. Jessica's father, Justin, said the loss left a hole in my chest, words that echoed across the silent room. Throughout these statements, Sigg sat with his head bowed. When the judge finally imposed life in prison plus 86 years, cameras captured Sigg's sharp intake of breath and a flicker of panic in his eyes. He looked up at the bench, face pale, and for the first time showed a glimpse of fear. As the judge ordered him remanded to custody, Sig's shoulders slumped in defeat. Media outlets replayed the moment repeatedly, a teenager's shock when told he must spend decades, if not life itself, behind bars. Clips of the hearing, including the expert testimony and family statements, went viral on YouTube and news sites. Viewers commented on Sig's changing expression, from blank detachment to stunned disbelief as reality settled in. Because Sig was 17 at the time, he was tried as an adult. Under Colorado law and a Supreme Court ruling barring life without parole for juveniles, he could serve life with review after 40 years. The judge added 86 more years for kidnapping, sexual assault, and tampering with evidence, effectively ensuring he will never be free. Today, Sig is housed in the Bent County Correctional Facility, a medium-security prison in Colorado. He spends his days in a cell block for high-risk inmates and follows a strict routine: meals, limited recreation, and counseling sessions. Records show he has taken anger management classes and met with a therapist, though prison officials remain tight-lipped on his progress. Sig's case fueled debates over how to treat violent minors. Child advocates argued for more mental health support and early intervention to catch dangerous behavior before it escalates. Lawmakers in Colorado tightened safe walk and school safety laws, and some introduced bills to restrict online content that glamorizes violence. Others insisted that the severity of Sig's crime left no choice but the harshest penalties. These teenagers, once ordinary faces in classrooms and neighborhoods, became symbols of raw violence and broken lives. Their courtroom moments, whether stunned silence, chilling smirks, or desperate pleas, lay bare the deep scars left by their crimes. Even as life sentences close legal chapters, families and communities must carry the wounds forever.